December 1994. The Sony PlayStation makes its debut worldwide. With 16-bit graphics, CD-ROM technology, it was very cutting edge for its time. There are many aspects of the console that could be discussed. Its history, the games on offer, or the fact that Sony thought the PlayStation Mini was a good idea. However, I would instead like to draw attention to a topic that's become much more popular with the rise in popularity of low-poly horror games. Why were the graphics of the PS1 so unnerving? It seems like such a strange subject, and on the surface, many would question how many of these beloved titles could be frightening in the least. In this video, I hope to give a better understanding as to why the aesthetics of the PS1 are so unsettling, and why many indie horror games today are inspired by this style. One aspect of the PS1 that I find quite unsettling is the way the graphics would warp. The reason this occurs is due to the graphical limitations of the time, and this will be the case with the majority of the points I'll make during this video. The layout, character models and props would all have a base model, similar to a wooden art model. Unlike games nowadays, they couldn't fluidly graft a face to a model. Instead, they'd have to stretch and bend the image of the character's face to wrap around the 3D model. The face clearly looks like it's been tampered with, as do the environments and props. It gives this unnerving feeling that the world around you has been designed. Of course, this is the case, but I never felt that way when playing games like, say, Yakuza or Half-Life 2. These worlds fully immerse me in how real they feel, in a graphical sense. Many PS1 games do immerse you, but it's more in the sense of the story and characters, not the graphics. Instead, the world feels tampered with, and gives this eerie vibe that someone has designed this world specifically to unsettle you. Whether it's intentional or not, the point still stands. Yet another graphical limitation of the PS1 was its field of view. Field of view was the amount of space that could be rendered by the console. Allow me to explain. Here's a game I've been playing recently, Star Wars Battlefront 2. Notice how I can see the world in its entirety. The forest of Kashyyyk stretching for miles. In the days of the PS1, you couldn't pull this off. The game could only render so much of the environment, and as a result, when you attempted to view the world from a first-person perspective, it was nothing but a huge black abyss. The game could only render the rest of the area if you walked forward, which would reveal more of the level. In some games, this was used to great effect. A game that comes to mind would be the original Silent Hill. Instead of simply leaving a black barrier to awkwardly cover the entirety of the city, they made the decision to mask it as fog, which is a fantastic choice. It masks the limitations of the PS1's hardware by making it look like fog. Thus, it also adds to the game's atmosphere, and being that it's a horror game, this helps immensely. However, when it's simply left as this big black abyss, it's very off-putting. This of course lends itself well to a horror game, as it fills the player with the fear of the unknown, the feeling that at any moment, something could jump out. Visuals are only one part of this feeling of dread. Credit is also due to the sound design of these games. The Sony PlayStation was equipped with a 16-bit Sony SPU, which stands for Sound Processing Unit, meaning that a lot of the voice lines, music and ambient noises didn't come through crystal clear. The sounds were very bit crunched and weak. As time has gone on, sound chips and speakers have come a long way. However, with many of these new pixelated horror games coming on the scene, the old nostalgia of hearing 16-bit sounds on an old Panasonic TV from 1998 come flooding back. It again makes you feel very uneasy, as not only are the environments around you unnatural, but the sounds are too. It taps into this feeling that the world around you is tampered with, and it's here where the uncanny valley hits you hard. Now that you have an idea of how this works, I'd like to present you with a few examples of this style, and maybe you'll begin to understand why these low poly PS1 graphics are such an effective way of unsettling players. First up, we have Akamanto. This game is heavily inspired by the work of Puppet Combo, and much like Puppet Combo's horror games, the graphics are very effective at creating a tense and nauseating atmosphere. It's set in a Japanese secondary school where two schoolgirls have convinced your character to go into the school after it's closed up for the night. From here, it plays like a mix of Silent Hill, Resident Evil and Puppet Combo's games, where you're required to collect items, solve puzzles and escape from the entity known as Akamanto, and this is based on a famous Japanese urban legend. But I think it'd be better to show you what I'm talking about instead of telling you. Watch some of this gameplay for yourself, and with any luck, you'll begin to see why the low poly style is so effective. All the points mentioned above are used to their full potential. The walls warp, the field of view is very limited, and the sound design is perfect. The complete silence that fills the school is numbing, and it makes it all the more startling when Akamanto begins screaming and chasing you around the school. Another horror game I want to bring attention to here is Sanguine Sanctum. This horror game goes for a more surreal approach, with strange otherworldly visuals that make you feel very insignificant in comparison. The story of Sanguine Sanctum isn't made clear to the player, and it's my understanding that this was intentional. Sanguine Sanctum doesn't want to tell you a story. Instead, it just wants to immerse you in a very surreal, strange environment, and in that regard, it does a fantastic job. As you can see, the game has you exploring these strange cosmic worlds. Very little makes sense about it, but it's still a very tense experience. It again taps into this fear of the unknown, that at any moment something might attack you. You just don't know what, or when. Much like Akamanto, all of the graphical and auditory traits are on display here. The warping of the world, the field of view is obscured, and the audio has that distinct weakness to it. Even when you're in a world that seems relatively normal and peaceful, that eeriness is still present. I'll again play some gameplay, just so you can immerse yourself in the experience. So in conclusion, this was just a short little analysis to whet your appetite and get you thinking about a kind of horror aesthetic you may not have given much thought to before. The low poly PS1 style that many horror games adopt today is, in my opinion, one of the more effective out there. I can understand the appeal of having a flashy horror game with great sound design and graphics to boot, but I just can't help but feel in the course of horror games evolving, we lost that style that made so many beloved PS1 titles such as Silent Hill and Resident Evil popular. With all that said and done, I again want to thank those of you that took the time to check out this video, and I hope you got something out of it. I have another video in the works at the moment which will be an analysis similar to this one. This time it's a film, so look forward to that. As for right now, keep well, especially during this pandemic, and I hope to see you again soon.